Greetings friends, in this video we will do a quick run-through of the entire plot of all 6 Dead Space games. Yes, that many. The Brethren Moons, giant space jellyfish beings of an alien origin, are the main cause of all the problems within the game's universe. Befitting the name, each of them is the size of the moon, and they have a very peculiar way of reproduction. They scatter the black markers across the planets to force organic life to go mad, kill each other, and then they turn dead corpses into necromorphs, zombies who kill other living beings so that their corpses also turn into zombies, and so on, until all life on the planet is turned into necromorphs. Then the marker initiates the so-called convergence, the process of all necromorphs merging into one big lump, after which a new brother moon is born. A long time ago, the Brethren Moons spread these markers all over the Milky Way galaxy. Thus, once teeming with life, it turned into the lifeless and dead space we all know now. Almost all life has been devoured by necromorphs and merged into the moons. Only the Earth remains unsterilized, although the moons did actually throw the marker on our planet. It was the very same asteroid which led to extinction of the dinosaurs. And only in the 23rd century a scientist has finally found the black marker at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. By studying it, he comes to conclusion that nothing good can be expected from the marker, so he tries to warn people about the potential threat, but his warnings are in vain. The marker is activated and gradually begins to subjugate nearby people, and a religious cult, unitology, arises. Unitologists believe that humanity is destined to die and transform into the necromorph species, that this is the path to eternal life and unity. Therefore, they begin to promote this idea in every possible way. This, of course, is happening under the marker's influence. Study of the black marker goes on, and, in the name of science, it is decided to build its replica, the red marker, which functionally is the same as the original one, essentially it's just a copy of the black marker. The experiments with the red marker are initiated on the distant planet of Aegis 7. However, after several incidents related to necromorphs, the Earth's government decided that they are facing things they are not ready to deal with. Hence, the experiments were stopped, the planet was quarantined indefinitely, and all information was strictly classified. Nevertheless, unitology still exists, but the government is more or less successful in resisting the cult and preventing it from reaching the marker. So far, so good. By the way, some say that the black marker is the very cause of kickstarting evolution on Earth and turning monkeys into humans, like in a Space Odyssey. Once on Earth, the marker creates and influences intelligent beings so they can make more markers. In this case, if that is the case, the unitologists are correct. We humans really have one purpose: to become necromorphs and to be granted eternal life and unity. As a piece of a giant moon meatball, that is. Technically the truth. But for a while humanity forgot all about the markers and minded their own business, and the main business of the time was dealing with the lack of resources. Fossil fuels and silicon have depleted, necromorphs are reselling graphics cards for twice their MSRP, and the humanity is in the survival mode. Nevertheless, people managed to find a solution. They have mastered resource mining in space, on other planets, by building a giant planet cracker spaceship named Ishimura. With its gravitational manipulators, the ship is able to rip the whole planet apart for further mining. That is when mining helps with silicon supply. It all seems to be fine again for some time, until in the beginning of the 26th century, when unitologists messed around and found out about the red marker, hidden away from them by the government on Aegis 7, full of fossil resources. But since the planet is under quarantine and mining is prohibited, the Scientologists managed to set their man as a captain of the Ishimura. And of course they did that in order to get to the marker under the disguise of an illegal mining operation. They hid the crime within a smaller crime, and the ship has arrived to the planet's orbit. The red marker has been transported to the Ishimura, causing the ship's crew to go mad. Miners are slicing each other's throats, and their corpses are turned into necromorphs. But a few manage to survive, hiding on the paralyzed ship and trying to send a distress call to whoever it may reach. They have succeeded, and the Earth's government sends a rescue team on a shuttle. Thus, the Dead Space original horror game begins. There are at least two key characters on the rescue shuttle. First, Isaac Clarke, the main character of the series and an engineer who can fix broken things. He also has a personal reason in this mission. His girlfriend Nicole was a doctor on Ishimura, and he hopes to find her. Second, Kendra Daniels, an IT lady, but in fact a secret agent of the government. She was sent to Aegis 7 to steal the red marker and prevent unitologists from getting it. And from the very start, everything goes south. The auto-docking system is down, and after an attempt of docking in the manual mode, the shuttle somehow crash-landed into Ishimura. Very quickly, we discover that nothing works on the ship, and it looks abandoned except for necromorphs teeming within its every corner. But it seems like it is still possible to put them down if we bring the marker from the ship back to the planet. At least the survivors we happened to find said so. But actually it is the marker itself that manipulates everyone, commanding with its insidious whispers that it needs to be put back where it came from on Aegis 7. The game doesn't really explain why, it just belongs there. Probably a lot of carrion has remained on the planet since the time of experiments with the marker, so it doesn't want to lose valuable resources and plans to start the convergence on Aegis 7. Maybe. The marker's motives are not entirely clear, but it definitely does not want to leave the planet and assures everyone it can that everything will be alright as soon as it returns. We surprisingly meet our girlfriend Nicole, and she also asks us to return the marker, and for some reason keeps saying that we then will become whole. Then we meet a surviving scientist who also asks us for help to return the marker to its place and says something about becoming whole. And in general, people around wear hats featuring "Make Aegis 7 whole again." And we, Isaac Clarke, wishing of course for everything to return to normal, are trying to bring the marker back to the planet. We are a good person with good intentions, but the marker manipulates us through the people we trust and without suspecting things. Isaac is helping the Brethren Moons to bring all life to its end. When the scientist and Isaac have already prepared the marker for transportation, disguised government agent Kendra Daniels confronts us and sweeps the marker in front of our noses, leaving us stranded. What an unpleasant person, we may think to ourselves, although she's the only person who understands the marker's threat, at least in general, and doesn't lose her mind and succumb to the moons. So Kendra kills the scientist who helped us and hijacks our shuttle with the marker, but our girlfriend Nicole tells us how to stop Kendra. We just need to turn on the shuttle's autopilot. This will force the shuttle to return. And this is exactly what we're going to do. Kendra does not manage to fly far enough, so we pull her back using the autopilot trick hinted to us by Nicole, and as a result the shuttle is forced to land back while Kendra escapes on a lifeboat. We got the marker and went back to Aegis, but Kendra confronted us again, and while trying to convince Isaac to stop resisting, she explained that Nicole is dead and everything is a delusion. Be brave and watch your girlfriend's message to the end. See the truth, she says. So we watch the whole message and find out that Nicole killed herself. She knew it could only be either that way or by necromorphs. Isaac always watched only half of the video before and didn't know how it ends, but now we understand that we've been hallucinating Nicole all this time, but it's kind of too late, we have already returned the marker to its place, and suddenly a hefty necromorph attacks Kendra and smears her with its tentacle, which sounds like a different genre now. We fight that giant and defeat it, which still sounds weird, but in the meantime Ishimura's anti-gravity device, which holds a huge landmass of the planet above the surface of Aegis 7, begins to fail, and we must evacuate urgently before it crushes us. Isaac jumps in a rescue shuttle, flying away into the sunset, and just as soon as he does and gets to a safe distance, piece of the planet falls back on Aegis and destroys the red marker. We breathe out a sigh of relief, finally taking off our helmet, and people who played the original game should now start experiencing war flashbacks, because the game ends with the most fierce jump scare in the history of game development. Isaac turns his head and notices wounded and zombie-like Nicole, who immediately jumps out, screams, and attacks him. Darkness falls, ending the Dead Space original game. After the screamer, Isaac Clarke goes insane and wanders the space in his shuttle until he's spotted and taken to a mental institution on a colony built on what is left of Saturn's moon Titan. The colony runs by Hans Tiedemann. Even though he is the viceroy of the Earth's government, he disagrees with the official policy and believes that relying on gutting planets with planet crackers for resources is wrong and insufficient, and research of the markers has been banned for nothing, because if only they could have been studied properly, humanity could use the emitted energy and make a breakthrough for humankind. And how wonderful life could be even without the Ishimura and the like. Overall, it is clear where this is going. It turns out that the markers transmit their own construction schemes directly into people's consciousness. But these are complicated schemes, so not smart enough people go crazy, while smart ones can manage the burden, comprehend it, and fit the schemes into their heads. And Isaac Clarke is smart enough. Although he is clearly not okay mentally, the schemes can fit in his head, and when Isaac, along with a few other survivors who were in touch with the marker, has been taken to a hospital on Titan, Tiedemann, head of the colony, drugs them and extracts the marker's blueprints from their minds. Thus, over the course of 3 years, Isaac and the other lucky guys sedated by substances are helping Hans to build a new marker, the golden one. So here we go again, there is now the marker on Titan. But the backstory of Dead Space 2 is separated from the game itself by 2 other, not very well-known games in the series, a mobile game and a console one. They are linking what we have just discussed to the events of the second part, so we are going to touch upon these 2. Dead Space Sabotage is no longer officially available mobile game, which tells us how the necromorphs appeared on Titan. We play as an engineer with a call sign Vandal. Vandal has been tricked and recruited into unitology, and a murky guy, Tyler Radikov, instructs us to sabotage a government station on Titan to damage power supplies in the server rooms. We do that, and the station is broken into by necromorphs. That is the result the unitologists were looking for, but not what Vandal expected. Tyler pretends to be surprised too and says that he knows what to do next, and instructs us now to power down the doors leading to the living quarters. Then, according to Tyler, it will trigger the backup systems with better protection against necromorphs. We cut the power from the doors, but of course the auxiliary systems are not triggered. The necromorphs burst into the residential areas, slaughtering every civilian, and then Tyler tells us that this was his plan all along, surprised Pikachu. Then, the head of the colony, Hans Tiedemann, contacts us and, since we are still an engineer, instructs us to check why the reactor's core that powers the colony is overheating. We go to the core and see that it is because a giant necromorph has settled in it. We fight it, defeat it, and throw the monster into the reactor's vent, but like Balrog grabbed Gandalf, the beast swoops us with its tentacles and drags the player into the abyss, knocking off our helmet. Somehow we make it out of the vent, and without the helmet, the player can see the character's face now. It is a woman named Carrie Norton. Carrie reports to Tiedemann that she completed the mission but is severely injured. The credits roll. Playing the Dead Space 2 game, you can find the corpse of a woman and Norton's notes nearby, so it is highly likely that Carrie doesn't survive after the final fight. It's a puzzle game for PS3 and Xbox 360, where we again play as a unitologist on Titan, this time without a helmet, and the character's name is known from the beginning. It's Franco. Franco is not privy to the nuances of the unitology, nor does he have a clear understanding of necromorphs, but he believes in the promise of eternal life. Apparently, he thinks about that in slightly different colors rather than becoming a necromorph or a piece of a rotten meatball. Franco and his girlfriend Sarah fix things, including a solar panel outside the station. And Franco has to go into outer space to finish the job. When he returns, the station is already under the necromorph's attack. Franco and Sarah escape and must somehow make it to the hospital, the gathering point for the survivors. How exactly is up to the player, it is a decision-making game. But either way, Sarah dies, including, optionally, by Franco's hand. Sarah is not a unitologist, and Franco has to get rid of her because she is holding him away from his goal. Speaking of which, after arriving at the hospital and fighting his way through the hordes of necromorphs, Franco goes to the psychiatric ward and sets free Isaac Clarke. We play as Isaac again. After 3 years under the substances in an asylum, we are finally free, rescued by Franco, who was immediately killed by a necromorph. But we take advantage of our freedom and escape. A lady named Dinah contacts us and says that she can help, and through the blood-stained corridors we get to her place, but it turns out that she is the local leader of the unitologists, and we get captured by her man. What it all means. Dinah, leader of the unitologists, has sent a new recruit, Franco, to get Isaac out from the asylum, and she did that because she had found out that the head of the colony, Hans Steidman, had built the marker with Isaac's help, and she was going to steal Isaac away from Tideman so that she could now build the marker for the unitologists. But not for cheap energy as Steidman did, but to turn all humans into the moon, as the cultists always wanted. Hence, the entire previous game, Dead Space Ignition, was about the unitologists' attempt to kidnap Isaac from a government hospital, and despite Franco's death, the attempt was successful. Isaac is in Dinah's hands now. But while she is explaining to Isaac that he must build another marker in the name of unitology, the glass-walled room we are in is machine-gunned by Tideman's man. Dinah's killed on the spot, someone has been sucked into the space, and we, as Isaac, escape. We meet and become friends with a military pilot, Ellie Langford. We put her on the shuttle so she can fly as far away from that place as possible, and still haunted by visions of Nicole and rightfully blaming a marker for everything, we decide to destroy it. And just in time, since the convergence begins, the station has already accumulated enough necromorphs to create another brother moon. In order to clear the segments of our consciousness from the marker's influence, and this should also help us destroy the marker, Nicole, to whom Isaac somehow still trusts, advises to perform a surgery on our brain, so we use a special machine, penetrate our brain with a needle right in the center of the pupil, and after a successful surgery, heading up to the marker. Wounded Hans Steidman, who blames everything that happened to his station on us, attacks Isaac, but the thing is, you should never threaten a protagonist in a video game. Tideman dies. We again see Nicole. She thanks us for everything we've done and tells that the last thing she needs to do for the successful convergence is to consume us, the one who created this marker. We really should have stopped trusting her. For the second game in a row we make the same mistake and let the marker fool us with Nicole's image. Thanks to the recent brain surgery, Nicole is climbing into our mind, and we have to defeat her there. The marker is somehow connected to our brain, the brain of its creator. We fight Nicole and the marker in our head, get victorious by shooting them in our imagination, thus defeated in our mind. The marker is also destroyed in real life. And along with the marker, the nuclear reactor fails. Everything collapses, but we don't even try to save ourselves anymore. Isaac Clarke is tired of being a character in a horror setting, and just sits and waits for his demise. The credits roll, and when there is no hope left, Ellie, risking her life, flies in and saves us. Isaac runs after the shuttle, jumps into it, and successfully evacuates. We sigh with relief, but remembering the similar situation at the end of the first game, Isaac cautiously turns his head and sees Ellie. No screamers this time. The Dead Space 2 DLC was released as well, but it does not affect the main storyline, and since it is a spin-off, lore-wise it is better to go back to that story a bit later on, at the end of this video. A long time ago, among other planets, the Brethren Moons placed a marker on the planet of Tau Volantis. Soon the Tau Volanthians encountered everything humanity will encounter in future. They began making copies of the marker and ended up with a disaster too. In a desperate attempt to stop the convergence, they hastily built a machine, which is what they actually call it, the machine. Ideally, the machine would have destroyed the moon, which was born from the corpses of the Tau Volanthians. But since they didn't have time to fine-tune the device, it worked less than perfectly and just froze the moon and the entire planet. All intelligent life on Tau Volantis have ceased to exist under a layer of snow, but the unfinished moon was also frozen before it could be fully born. The marker, however, continued to send signals into space, luring new victims to Tau Volantis, and soon after humans too discovered the black marker on Earth, began to study it and build new markers and got on the trend, they caught a signal from Tau Volantis, became interested, and rushed to learn more about the frozen planet. Their mission was a complete failure. The marker drove newcomers insane, people ended up killing each other, their corpses were turned into necromorphs, familiar picture, right? And when even the Earth's command realized that it was impossible to hold the situation on Tau Volantis under control, the leaders of the expedition were given final orders to remove themselves, so that the necromorphs from this planet could never get to Earth. So the members of the mission had to destroy all traces of their activity there, the population, those who didn't obey the order, and, in the end, themselves. Actually, though, one scientist, let's even call him by name, Earl Serrano, figured it all out. He understood the purpose and structure of the machine and realized its potential, that it could be used to destroy the moon, and not just to keep it frozen. Using the information from a brain of a dissected Tau Volanthian codenamed Rosetta, scientists led by Serrano created the so-called Codex, a device that would allow them to fine-tune the machine, bring it to its full power to destroy the moon, the markers, and all the necromorphs on the planet. But it was too late. The final orders had already been given by this time, the military command didn't listen to Serrano with his associates, and the scientist's plan was deemed unrealistically optimistic. So in the prologue of Dead Space 3 we see how the soldiers sent by Serrano for the Codex couldn't do it. Both the soldier and the Codex were destroyed, fulfilling the order of self-elimination. Was it the telepathic influence of the marker not wanting to let Serrano use the Codex? I'd say maybe. 200 years later, saved by Ellie in the Dead Space 2 finale, Isaac starts dating her and finally leaves Nicole behind. He no longer sees her in visions, but after all the events he has lived through, Isaac is still not fully recovered mentally, which is still an incredible mental stability. But yep, he gets locked from within, his relationship with Ellie doesn't work out, so Isaac and Ellie break up. She heads to fight the markers and necromorphs to end it all, and he settles on the moon colony near Earth and doesn't want to hear anything about the markers. However, two government soldiers disregard Isaac's desires, Ellie's new boyfriend Robert Norton, and John Carver, who lost his family during the war with the unitologists. They burst into our apartment, tell us that Ellie sent them, that she needs our help to save the world, that she's close to a breakthrough and needs a marker specialist, and that she's waiting for us somewhere far away. It is unknown whether Robert Norton is related to Carrie Norton. Still having feelings for Ellie, Isaac agrees to help her, and we must leave the lunar colony with Carver and Norton now. Which is a challenge, since the Earth government is in its last days and the actual power is already in the hands of the unitologists, and their leader, Jacob Danik, personally wants to take revenge on us for all the harm we have done to the markers. By the way, even before power overthrow, the Earth government had managed to change their shoes since the first game, and for the sake of cheap energy, they began mass experiments with markers. They built many more of them on a bunch of planets, right in the middle of densely populated colonies. To make the markers safe and neutralize their effect on the brain, markers are encased with metal silos. And as long as the shield works, everything is fine, but this idea, in my opinion, is just as good as building nuclear reactors in the middle of metropolises. Everything will be fine until the first accident. While we are trying to escape from the moon, Danik captures us in an ambush, and before killing us, he explains his plan in detail. In addition to taking revenge on us, it includes destroying all those protective shells around the markers. Danik even blows up one of them before our eyes, but when he finally feels like killing us, we dodge the shot, escape, and are picked up by Carver and Norton in a space shuttle. Meanwhile, Ellie is waiting for us in orbit of Tau Volantis. She has detected a signal of the marker from this planet, but mistakenly she thinks that it is the home world of all markers, and that we will find the key to a salvation for humanity there. Ellie and a few scientists are waiting for us to pick them up on a barely working 200-year-old ship left in orbit by the previous expedition. There is an entire comic book devoted to how they got there. We will not touch upon the comics in this video, but short to say, they were escaping the unitologists, their ship hit the space mines, but they managed to evacuate and get to this ancient abandoned ship. We fly to help Ellie, but we also run into the space mines and have to evacuate, as she once did, to the same old ship. And though we don't have any working means of transportation to go elsewhere, at least we are all together now. Isn't it what matters? Ellie shows us the inscriptions on the walls of the ship left by the previous crew, and since we are the knowledge bearer of the marker, we decode them, and among other things it says "turn it off." And we draw a whole series of wrong conclusions, that there is the machine on this home world of the marker that controls all markers, and we must turn it off, although, as we remember, this machine, on the contrary, keeps the brother moon frozen. These inscriptions were left by crazy people who wrote things the marker wanted, but Isaac and the team don't know that yet, although he could have guessed it, since the inscriptions are in blood and in the marker's signs. These words should definitely be treated at least with caution. It is the third game in the series after all. It is not the first time we deal with markers, for God's sake, but unfortunately we believe in all that BS. We find and repair a shuttle on one of the old ships drifting nearby. It is our only transport now, and we have to decide. Either we all pack our things up and run while we can, or we go all the way and fly to Tau Volantis. And Robert Norton, who's been acting really weirdly lately, reacting morbidly to our presence and being overly jealous of Ellie, is trying to talk everyone out of going to Tau Volantis. He wants to go home. But Norton's sudden change of temper doesn't alarm anyone. Neither Ellie nor Isaac find any indication that the marker is trying, with Robert's help, to stop us. Ellie's like, I don't even know what's gotten into him. He is not usually like that. Well, forget it. This is the third game we've been at war with markers. We can already build them and read their language. Well, luckily no one agrees with Robert, and our gang goes to Tau Volantis. We crash land again, miraculously survive, but thrown apart from each other, and right after being reunited. Danik's soldiers attack us. How did they find us? How did they know we were in Tau Volantis? What traitor among us could have told them that? It is a mystery. Anyway, more than in Danik and his man, we are interested in the alien machine. Our scientist friends found out that the machine is somehow connected to the nervous system of a huge beast that is in hibernation, and that its cerebral system has been used to transmit the machine's signals, and if we could irritate the nerve nodes of the beast, we could trace the signal's path and thus find the machine. The plan works, and we find out that the machine is in the depths of a mountain. Good. But we can't just start using the machine, we need the codex first. Apparently the codex is necessary for any human interaction with the machine, whether it's tuning it up or shutting it down. But it's still too early to think about the codex. We get ambushed by Danik, and before he feels like killing us again, he again explains his plan to us in detail. You'd never guess it, but it was Robert Norton who betrayed us all. He turned us in to the unitologists in exchange for evacuation from Tau Volantis. But Danik is not going to evacuate anybody, he is going to kill us all, including Norton. However, using exactly the same dodge technique as on the moon at the beginning of the game, we do not let Danik kill anyone, dodge the shot, shoot back. Danik escapes though. The same big monster whose nerve bundles we have been shooting before to find out where the machine is, rises from hibernation. It swallows Isaac, we keep shooting its insides, and it spits us out. But when we're out of the monster, a completely insane Robert Norton is waiting for us. He threatens us with a gun, but before he feels like killing us, he explains his plan to us in detail. From his perspective, we are the reason he's stuck on this planet, and we are also trying to steal his girlfriend, although we do not seem to be trying hard at all. And while he's talking, Isaac shoots him in the head. We tell Ellie about the situation, and she takes it relatively easy. It is strange, she says, that he started acting this way as we were approaching the planet that we think is the marker's homeworld, but I guess we'll never know why. After all, I like you too, Isaac, and your books about robots are also nice. Next, we must create a codex, just as our predecessors did 200 years ago. In order to do that, we pick up the pieces of Rosetta's body scattered around the lab, obtain the necessary data from it, and make the new codex. As we encounter alien knowledge through the codex, we experience a vision and reveal the truth about Tau Volantis, its inhabitants, the machine, the codex, and the Brethren Moons. We realize that we have been mistaken all along. This is not the marker's homeworld. The marker was also thrown here, just as the black marker has been thrown to Earth. And if we turn off the machine, we will not turn off the marker, but unfreeze the moon instead. And that is good, says Danik, appeared out of nowhere. He takes the codex while threatening us with the gun again. He aims at us, intending to kill, but before he feels like doing so, you won't believe it, he explains why we are wrong about unitology. We take advantage of his talking and trigger the decontamination of the room we are all in, the procedure that destroys all organic matter. Danik's guards are disintegrated on the spot, though Danik flees with the codex. We run after him, except for Ellie. Ellie does not manage to get out of the poisoned room in time and tells us to go. So John and Isaac are forced to leave her behind to save their own lives. We chase Danik, and from the notes left by Cyrano learn about the true potential of the machine. Not only that it can freeze the Brethren Moons, but it can also destroy them for good. But we need to use the codex to fine-tune the machine first. Danik got the codex, but we catch up with him and take the codex at our hands. Overall, it's not bad. All that's left is to get to the machine and to use the codex, so the machine could kill the moon and disable the markers. But when we finally get to the machine's control room, we see Danik. Somehow he got here first, and more than that, he got Ellie as a hostage. It turns out that she escaped from the gas room through a pipe, but Danik caught her, and now he offers to trade her life for the codex. We hesitate, but John suddenly agrees, tosses the codex to Danik. Danik lets Ellie go, shoves the codex into the machine and shuts it down. Personally, I don't understand what prevented us from killing Danik while he was putting the codex in. Anyway, the moon immediately wakes up, everything around us collapses, and a fallen stalactite impales Danik. We send Ellie to the shuttle and ask her to fly back to Earth to warn everyone and tell everything about what happened here. As for us, we must now fight the reanimated moon. We use the gravity gun to pierce its eyes with markers built by Tau Valentians in huge quantities that now fly around us. Get back to the machine's control room and turn it on to its full capacity. The moon dies and the main marker of Tau Valentis, which started it all, shuts down. Unfortunately, the blast wave created by the machine when it was turned on gets John and Isaac thrown off the platform they were on, and for now their fate is unknown. Ellie tries to contact us but gets no answer. She weeps, sees that there is no longer any signal coming from the marker on Tau Valentis. Through tears she celebrates our victory and flies back to Earth. After the credits, we hear Isaac's voice calling for Ellie over the radio. There is a Dead Space 3 story expansion. After the events of the game, we wake up in some apartment, go to the mirror and see John Carver in the reflection. John in the mirror asks us what the hell are we doing in his apartment. And suddenly we're not even in the apartment anymore, but somewhere on Tau Volantis, and neither of us has the slightest idea of how we survived the fall in the game finale of Dead Space 3. I decided not to omit this so that you can understand that there is no intelligible explanation of how we went from the end of the third game to the beginning of the DLC. It could be hallucination of a dying Isaac or a dream, a parallel universe, or they just died and became the part of the moon. Alternatively, maybe they somehow survived and the writers decided not to specify exactly how, and this apartment and mirror story is just an artistic tool to describe the confused mind of a severely headbanged man. The game doesn't clarify this in any way, so treat the DLC story with caution. When we come to our senses, we quickly discover that although the moon is dead, but for some reason necromorphs are still active on the planet. So the machine in the Dead Space 3 finale doesn't solve all the problems. Moreover, we get visions of the Brethren moons telling us that they have woken up and want to devour the Earth. Thus, we decide to go back to Earth as soon as possible to warn everyone. Meanwhile, Danik's people are fleeing the planet and we manage to steal one of their ships. Unfortunately, this ship has a damaged module which is responsible for long-distance flights, so you can fly such a shuttle only for short distances. Therefore, hoping to find spare parts and materials for repairs, we use it to fly to one of those old abandoned ships hanging in orbit. The old ship we docked at is crowded with necromorphs, but it definitely has some spare parts. And after a little bit of thinking, we came to the realization that we could repair this 200-year-old ship and fly it right to Earth. We're a space engineer after all. And while we're looking for the spare parts, the moons are bombarding us with visions. They ask us to show them the way to Earth. We tell John that we cannot go back because we will bring the moons there, and John reasonably objects that if we are talking to the voices in our head, then we are not a person whose advices he'd listen to, and there is no way we can come to consensus, so we start shooting each other. At least we think we do. In reality, our fight was a hallucination. After a while our consciousness clears up, we realize that the moons already know where the Earth is. They figured it out a long time ago. The awakened moon on Tau Volantis has already told its brethren everything, and the moons only pretended to be asking for directions to Earth to delay our flight back home, so we couldn't warn anyone in time. But those visions are in the past, and John and Isaac are friends again, and we are on our way home. However, it is too late. As we approach Earth, we hear the necromorph sounds on the radio instead of the dispatcher sensor, see the Brethren moons floating up from behind Earth, and another one appears right in front of our ship. Dissonant noise, noble film grain, black screen. This is the end of Dead Space trilogy. This story never got a sequel, and it is unclear now if it ever will. However, in addition to the main storyline of the Dead Space game universe, there is another, secondary one, which unfolds in parallel with the trilogy. There is a whole standalone console game, Dead Space Extraction, and the Dead Space 2 Severe DLC dedicated to it. One continues another. Let's talk about them briefly. Extraction is a prequel to the original Dead Space game, and from this prequel we learn how it all began. Excavations on Aegis 7 are going on, and the miners have found the red marker. It drives them insane in a matter of minutes, and one of the miners, Sam, begins to see his co-workers as monsters, as if they attack him. Though they are not really monsters and not attacking, but he really fights them off, defends himself as best as he can, and single-handedly kills a bunch of his co-workers. And he is eventually killed by the police officer Nathan, who arrives on alarm. That, of course, was just the beginning. The bodies in the morgue turn into necromorphs, and you know what's next. Aegis 7 turns into hell. And the four main characters, police officers Nathan and Gabe, Lexine, who used to be a girlfriend of the now-killed Sam, and the mining company CEO Warren Eckhart, are trying to escape from the planet to the spaceship Ishimura, the planet cracker. Ishimura, though, doesn't want to accept anyone from the surface and shoots everyone who tries to get on board, including the shuttle with Nathan, Gabe, Lexine, and Eckhart. Under fire, they crash into Ishimura and get into the ship through the open space. Sadly, things on Ishimura are also not fine, it's full of necromorphs. So the characters look for a shuttle which could be used to fly away from Ishimura now. But before that, they meet Nicole, the very same girlfriend of Isaac Clarke, still alive. She doesn't join them though, but we finally see her in person. Several major events happen then. Necromorphs grab and drag away Lexine, but it is unclear how. She survives, and it's truly a miracle. And most importantly, Gabe overhears Eckhart's conversation and finds out that he is a unitologist, and his secret assignment is to find a person immune to the effects of the marker for experiments. Eckhart considers Lexine to be such a person. Probably this peculiarity of her has helped her somehow survive close contact with the necromorphs. Eckhart shoots Gabe, who compromised him, but suddenly, appeared out of nowhere necromorph kills Eckhart. Nathan and Lexine pick up their wounded friend Gabe. Now, in order to leave the ship, they must disable the air defense system, which automatically shoots down all shuttles within its range. Nathan successfully undertakes this task, though he loses his hand. It was nailed to the Ishimura's hull by a necromorph, and to save his life, Nathan had to lose his limb. The three of them, Nathan, Gabe, and Lexine, behold Gabe and three in one sentence, steal a shuttle from Ishimura and make their way to the colony on Titan. While leaving, they see a rescue shuttle with Isaac and Kendra getting close to Ishimura, try to warn them, but Isaac's ship doesn't get the message, and while Lexine keeps trying to deliver it, Nathan slowly dies, apparently from the blood loss, immediately rises as a necromorph, and bounces on Lexine from behind. And I've just realized that Gabe and Nathan make Gaben. Lexine fights off Nathan the necromorph, and together with Gabe they make it from Ishimura to Titan, which is about the same as escaping from Hiroshima to Nagasaki. But before Titan is also overrun by necromorphs, Gabe and Lexine fall in love, get married, and even almost have a baby. Lexine is pregnant. Gabe and Lexine, however, unknowingly participate in a government experiment, that is to see if Lexine's child will inherit her presumed immunity to the marker's telepathy. But suddenly necromorphs begin to rush from every corner, and the head of the colony hunts Tideman, realizing that it is time to take extreme measures, orders to, just in case, eliminate the participants of the previous necromorph crisis, meaning the incident on Aegis 7, including Gabe and Lexine. The player-controlled Gabe finds it out and rushes to his wife, but Tideman's man, Victor, outpaces him. Victor, however, doesn't manage to kill Lexine. The so-called Oracles, members of a mysterious organization also interested in studying Lexine, have already taken her away. Luckily, necromorphs attack and kill the Oracles, and while Lexine hides in the shuttle, we kill their risen corpses for good. We cannot leave on the shuttle though because of the quarantine. The system doesn't allow us to exit the port, so we have to tinker with the wires to bypass this restriction, and while we're doing that, Victor comes from behind and blows up both of us on a grenade. Victor dies instantly and we lose a leg, and with our last breath covered in blood, we open the airlock for our wife. In tears, she leaves the colony and we die, without a leg, but with a sense of accomplishment. And this is the plot of the Dead Space series. Perhaps it is not without flaws. I do not understand at all what prevented us from shooting Danik when he was turning off the machine, what prevented Danik from shooting us when he was holding Ellie hostage, and in all previous similar cases. That is also a mystery to me. However, the plot is still decent, the lore is awesome, and the games are extremely atmospheric, beautiful and authentic, especially the first and the second ones. The third game I also played with pleasure, but it is very different from the previous chapters. It has less horror and more shooter in it. So I can understand the disappointment of those who didn't expect the third installment to change the course of the series, but it is also a good game in its own way. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave your comments if you have any suggestions for the future videos, I would love to read it. And subscribe to the channel because there are so many more videos coming. Have fun, stay tuned, and see you soon.